The anime begins with the protagonist named Hikari Hanazono. Since she was young, she's trained to be the best at everything, particularly in professional fights, as her father, a big fan of the sport, has trained her in it. Believing herself unbeatable due to her exceptional skill, her outlook changes when she meets Takishima Kei. He challenges her and defeats her, much to her dismay. Despite several subsequent attempts to beat him, she continues to lose, making Takishima the first person ever to defeat her. Years later, Hikari is ready to start school. Before leaving home, she bids farewell to her parents. At school, she surprises her classmates as she is among the top 7 students in the SDA class. Tired of being treated differently, she tries to request equal treatment when her friend and classmate, Akira, arrives. In class, they meet their classmates, Yamamoto-jun and Yamamoto Megumi, ranked 3rd and 4th respectively, and Suji Ryu in 7th place, who was looking after a small sloth that accidentally hurt Hikari. Kei Takishima, the school president's son and 5th in the rankings, also appears, startling the girls due to his disheveled appearance, though it turns out he's just hungry. Later, the class gathers for tea and snacks. Hikari notices Takishima's absence, only to learn he's in the laboratory, which calms her. However, he unexpectedly appears and teases her, claiming she missed him. This annoys Hikari, who dislikes being considered second best. During physical education class, Hikari tries to outjump her rival but fails as Takishima outperforms her even at the highest jump. This prompts her to challenge him to the final exam. After the tests, Takishima overhears other students discussing them. The next day, Hikari arrives at class to find her classmates preparing for a concert, which the Yamamoto brothers want to hold. Initially believing they should focus on exams, she ends up encouraging them. However, a student named Nakamoto and his friends confront the SDA class for always looking down on them. Hikari tries to deny this accusation, but Nakamoto remains upset. Takishima arrives, having overheard their conversation the previous day, and challenges them to a confrontation, leading the boys to leave. After Takishima takes a shower, he finds a note from Hikari and meets her in the library, where she falls asleep. When she wakes up, it's already night, and she tells him about a new challenge she has in mind. They hear a noise and discover intruders Nakamura and his friends attempting to steal exam results. Nakamura offers to give them to Hikari in exchange for a chance to beat Takishima, but she refuses, preferring to win honestly. Takishima intervenes and strikes Nakamura, defending Hikari. They teach the students a lesson, causing them to flee. Later that night, Hikari reveals she called Takishima to wish him a happy birthday and celebrate with him, embarrassing him as he initially thought she wanted to spend time alone. His mood changes when he realizes the entire class has gathered for a private concert to celebrate his birthday. Although Hikari is excited to hear Megumi's singing voice, it doesn't turn out as expected. In the following days, the SEA class gathers to receive their exam results. Hikari is ecstatic as she achieved a perfect score, believing she has finally taken first place. However, Takishima reveals she was mistakenly given an extra 5 points, so he remains in first place. After a few days, the protagonist arrives at school where she again asks the other students to treat her normally. At that moment, Akira arrives and informs her that the school rankings are out, so they both go to check the standings. Some students mention that the school divides students into different groups, with the top group being the 7 best who belong to the SDA class. Just then, the other members of the top class arrive, including Takishima, who congratulates Hikari on her results. Hikari rushes, thinking she might be in first place, but ends up disappointed when she realizes she's in second place again, and her rival was just teasing her. When the SEA members are gathered, Akira talks about the snacks she prepared while Hikari is only interested in studying, noticing her rival enjoying tea. Takishima tells her he'll read books while enjoying his tea, sparking another round of rivalry between them. Later, one of the boys mentions that the student council president was hospitalized, news that surprises Hikari as she didn't know the school had a student council managed solely by second-year students. 3 students arrive, with one introducing himself as Takehajime, the student council president, who confronts them for mocking him and disrupting his arrival at school. He challenges them to a competition where the winner will join the SEA class. Hikari accepts the challenge and wishes them luck, impressed by their courage, which embarrasses Takei. Takishima, jealous, throws a book at the student council president and also accepts the challenge, but Takei feels threatened and decides to leave, promising to inform them of the challenge. In the following days, it became official that the student council and SEA class will have a wrestling match at school. Hikari is excited, knowing she's skilled in this discipline and that Takishima will participate, though they'd expect the student council to enlist professional wrestlers. The next day, they start training, pausing to rest and deciding to have a contest where the loser must obey the winner. After agreeing, they continue training, unaware they are being watched by their rivals who note their inhuman fighting abilities, planning to play dirty. In the days that follow, the student council president and his friends attempt to injure Hikari and Takishima. Takishima realizes their plan and rushes to find Hikari, urging her not to compete for fear she'll get hurt. Unable to voice his concerns directly, he tells her that she would be a burden to him if she competes. This weighs on Hikari's mind during her training, convinced she can never defeat her rival, while Takishima asks Ryu to replace Hikari in the match. Despite Ryu's initial refusal, he has no choice as Takushima is determined to train him. The day of the match arrives, and despite Takushima's request, Hikari is chosen to participate, leaving him displeased. Just then, a girl arrives to give the boys a gift, which turns out to be another trap set by the student council. As the battle begins, the host welcomes the competitors, the Fanki brothers, and the two SDA members, revealing they are trapped and must coordinate their attacks. Initially, Takushima tries to protect Hikari, taking hits from their opponents as he doesn't want her to get hurt, leading to the council's apparent victory. However, the boys manage to break free, and the real battle ensues, resulting in the SDA class emerging victorious. Afterward, Takushima reminds Hikari of their contest, declaring himself the winner once again, so now she must obey whatever he wishes. The next day, Hikari is ready to receive her companion's orders, but he simply remains silent, which annoys her. Eventually, he calmly asks her to prepare him a meal. Consequently, the protagonist attempts to make a bento at home, but her mother gets upset because she doesn't want her there, knowing her cooking often results in a mess. In class, Hikari asks Akira to use the school's kitchen. Meanwhile, the class members are playing checkers but observe Takushima from afar, noticing his unusual behavior of smiling and being kind, which unnerves them. The student council president arrives, whom none of the SEA members respect, but he's there to see Hikari. Takushima urges them to leave, telling them that the girl has transferred. At that moment, the protagonist is in the kitchen preparing rice with her friend, but Akira is surprised when Hikari breaks a pot and struggles to wash the rice properly due to her strength, prompting her to leave. The student council president searches for the protagonist and finds her in the kitchen, seeing her cooking and imagining that maybe she's doing it for him, but his friend tells him that would be impossible. Later, the SEA boys are about to eat, but Takushima again refuses, eagerly awaiting the protagonist's preparation. Hikari arrives to bring him his dish after working on it all morning but trips, causing the food to fall on the floor. She immediately picks it up and eats it herself, not wanting the young man to taste it because it burned. As a result, she runs back to the kitchen to prepare another dish. While in the kitchen, Hikari resolves to give her all to cook the bento despite not having cooked since she was little. However, Takushima arrives and asks her not to strain herself as he will eat the rice she has already prepared. Nevertheless, the protagonist refuses because she wants to fulfill her goal and give her best effort. Takushima spends the day waiting for his dish, but the protagonist continues to have problems with the rice, thinking her strength is the issue. Although she searches for a rice that suits her, she still struggles. While the SEA class is having tea, they notice Takushima is hungry but refuses to admit it, calmly waiting for the dish prepared by his companion. Akira worries about this and decides to check the kitchen, finding it a mess and her friend struggling and refusing help. However, one of her classmates arrives and tells her that Takushima doesn't care whether the food tastes good or not because his parents always worked and never prepared him lunch, so he never tasted a dish made with love. This motivates the protagonist to ask for help in preparation. Once the preparation is complete, the protagonist brings the dish to Takushima, who has been waiting all day. Everyone is surprised to see the rice well presented. However, just as Takushima is about to eat, Tekai arrives and quickly takes the rice, starting to eat it. This leaves everyone speechless as he appeared out of nowhere. But Takushima is upset about his food being taken. Nevertheless, the student council president didn't like the food, and seeing his rival upset scares him off, while Hikari apologizes to her companion for preparing an unpleasant rice dish. But despite this, the young man eats the rice and says he wants to taste it because he spent the whole day waiting for it. Much to the protagonist's surprise, the young man liked her food. Once he finishes eating, Takushima goes looking for Teki to teach him a lesson, while the protagonist says that next time she will prepare rice for everyone, although her classmates are not so happy about it. The following day, the SEA class is having breakfast outdoors, enjoying the fresh air. Takushima then asks the protagonist if she has anything to do later because his father wants to see her. She agrees, much to her friend's surprise. Later, Hikari along with Akira and Tadashi arrive at the young man's house and are astonished by how huge it is, as the protagonist didn't remember it being so large. At that moment, Takushima's father, Oji, appears. He looks very young, which surprises the students because he has a baby face. He happily approaches Hikari, but is met with resistance, and they start to argue, only to be stopped by Takushima. As they enter the house, a young boy appears who Takushima introduces as his brother Sui. However, Sui has a bad attitude and asks the visitors to leave, even calling the protagonist old, which annoys her. She immediately goes up the stairs to confront him. Sui retreats into his room and closes the door, but this doesn't deter Hikari, who uses her strength to force the door open. She later regrets this and apologizes, but Oji isn't bothered and explains that his younger son's attitude is why he called Hikari to be his tutor. The next day, the SEA boys are surprised by this request and even ask Takushima why he doesn't do it himself since it's his brother. He explains it would affect his grades, but Hikari accepts nonetheless. So later, Hikari is with Sui in his room trying to teach him, but the boy is uninterested and continues to bother her. She gets annoyed because Sui has the same look as Takushima. At that moment, Takushima arrives to check on them and realizes it's a disaster. However, Oji asks his elder son to accompany him to an important meeting with some clients, but what catches the protagonist's attention is Sui's demeanor. The boy comments that things always work out when his brother goes to those meetings, which strikes Hikari as odd, but despite their best efforts, the students can't change anything. The next day, Hikari meets Sui outdoors to study, explaining that learning doesn't just come from books or the library, which he finds boring. She spots a dragonfly and catches it to show Sui, but Takishima appears and reveals he caught 3 dragonflies. This sparks a competition to see who can catch more, which Takishima ultimately wins. This all happens in front of Sui, who becomes upset because they interrupted him and confesses that he hates his brother. Because of this, Hikari can't stop thinking about it and shows her frustration with her rival. However, the next afternoon, the girl visits Sui and decides to put him to the test, asking him to engage in an exercise where they stare into each other's eyes for a while. Despite his efforts, the boy can't do it and claims she'll never understand because no matter how hard he tries, his brother feels nothing for him and always has a cold look. Hikari mentions how she made him smile by cooking rice, and he assumes she's in love with his brother and is only there for Takishima, but she reminds him she's actually there for him. At that moment, Takishima appears and asks his companion to stop what she had in mind and leave his brother alone. Sui feels sad because of his older brother's comments and runs off, prompting the protagonist to go after him, but her companion stops her and acknowledges everything that happens is his fault because there are always comparisons when they're together. Hikari asks him to be more honest with his feelings, but she goes after Sui anyway because she's his teacher. Later, the protagonist finds Sui and asks him to come home, but in her effort, she ends up hitting her head, which worries the boy. He tells her to hold on to him as they head back home. On the way, Sui collapses, but Hikari senses Takishima approaching, and it turns out to be true as he was worried about his companion. However, when he sees that she's okay, he's relieved and congratulates his brother for taking care of Hikari. The boy is astonished because he saw his brother smile for the first time. The next day, the protagonist is ready to visit her student, but at that moment, Takishima asks her not to rush because Sui arrived to tell the girl that her lessons are no longer needed since his elder brother will be his tutor now, as they get along and he wants it, which should make the girl happy but only annoys her because her rival took her place. In the SDA class, the members are ready to serve Akira's food, but she notices that her friend and Kei are not present. Suji informs her that they have met with the student council president to plan the festival. During the meeting, the students are apprehensive due to Takishima's presence, while Hikari suggests preparing cotton candy for the festival. Takei likes the idea and takes the opportunity to hold her hands, which annoys Kei, who ends up throwing an object in frustration. They end up proposing a contest to decide if that sweet will be chosen, as Takei wishes to offer another food option. The protagonist follows her companion and apologizes for not understanding his feelings sooner. Takishima thinks she has realized he's in love, but only remarks that he knows Takishima doesn't like the student council team. He starts laughing, telling her if she wants to join the council, she can, as they will lose anyway, and she'll remain a loser. Upon learning this, Akira doesn't understand why her friend allied with the enemy, but decides to join them. Days later, the groups hold the contest. The council, along with Hikari and Akira, are ready to start and begin offering cotton candy to students, which seems to be a success. However, Takishima appears with an ice cream truck, instantly drawing a crowd and leaving the council's stand empty. The protagonist gets upset and tries to increase the cotton candy amount, but she can't compete with her rival, causing the group to retreat as Hikari starts losing patience and composure. The next day in the SDA class, members see Takishima still not resting from winning the contest, so they decide to go eat something since Akira isn't there to prepare food for them. However, Takishima silently decides to stay, focusing on his work. Later, when Hikari is with her friend, she mentions how she enjoys being by her side because if she were with Takishima, he'd likely do everything on his own without asking for help or letting anyone interfere. This makes the girl reflect, and she can't sleep at night. The next morning, the protagonist returns to class and overhears students discussing the competition between the council and SEA class to see who will organize the festival. She sees the president carrying a mallet and decides to follow him. Upon catching up, he reveals plans to sabotage Takishima's store as he has been doing. Disliking this, she breaks the mallet, then runs to her class and asks Takishima to accept her in his group, not liking the idea of him working alone as it wouldn't be fun for anyone. He agrees, and as all the members spy on them, they are glad things are back to normal so Akira can prepare food for them again. Takishima then assigns tasks to each member, while Hikari arrives with the council members who also wish to join, though Takei only wants to be close to her. Nevertheless, Takishima accepts. As the days pass, the students head to the festival on a large boat, intriguing the protagonist as she has no idea where her companion planned for them to go. After everyone dons their yukatas, they arrive at an island. Takishima credits everyone's cooperation for the successful event. Everyone is happy and enjoying the grand festival, including Hikari, which prompts her rival to ask if she's truly having fun, referring to what she had said earlier. She tries to argue, but she can't help but enjoy herself. After a few days, Sue visits the protagonist, who initially feels upset that he replaced her. However, the boy is there to invite her to a party, as he's noticed his brother has been quite bored lately and believes she might also have fun at the event. Just then, Takushima arrives, furious that his younger brother gave an invitation to his classmate without permission. She informs him that she has already accepted the proposal and won't change her mind, even if it means going as his partner. Reluctantly, he agrees but insists she must do everything he asks, as she is, after all, his employee. Later, the protagonist asks her parents for fabric to make a dress, surprising them, but she is determined to do everything possible to be the perfect partner whom her rival cannot complain about. The next day, Hikari shows her dress to Takushima, who isn't pleased with it. He informs her that his chauffeur will pick her up after class to take her measurements for her dress. She's not convinced but can't do anything about it since he's her boss. Later, she informs her classmates that the party is for Seiga Yahiro and Megumi recommends not speaking during the event. Later, Hikari arrives at a store to have her measurements taken but struggles as she becomes nervous and starts laughing. However, a young man arrives to assist her and recognizes her and her martial arts skills, which surprises the protagonist. On the day of the party, Hikari arrives with her partner, who is stunned by her beauty. She initially feels self-conscious due to Takushima's gaze but realizes that he isn't looking at her for that reason and that her efforts are paying off. Upon arriving at the party, Takushima asks her to stay put and not talk to anyone while he greets some guests. At that moment, the members of the SDA class enter the party without permission to watch over Hikari. Bored, the protagonist goes out to the mansion's patio since her partner is only greeting all the guests. At that moment, a boy arrives whom she recognizes as the host of the party, Hiro. He asks if it's true that she is Takushima's partner, but she denies it, also stating that her companion wouldn't be interested in her. However, he doesn't believe it and thinks that Kei is in love with her. To test this, he decides to kiss her, but Takushima appears and removes Yahiro, surprising Hikari. Later, she finds herself in Takushima's arms but can't believe what Yahiro said is true. When she notices Takushima's hand around her, she gets scared and runs away. The girl hides in a room, but then Yahiro appears, continuing to bother her and threatens to discipline her if Kei cannot. Later, all the guests are greeted by Yahiro, who thanks everyone for attending and suggests a game of bear catching. To do this, you must choose someone for everyone to catch, so he takes the opportunity to choose Hikari. He tells her that to win, she must reach the mansion's rooftop without being caught. Despite her partner's plea not to do so, the girl accepts the challenge. As the game begins, she runs to escape, but when she sees some boys chasing her, she quickly finishes them off. The protagonist continues her path but is caught by someone who turns out to be Takushima. He asks her to leave the place and asks her what Yahiro said, but she refuses to leave, as it would mean that the host is right. Hikari continues her journey, leaving her partner behind, but he decides to help her and finishes off the guests following her. Eventually, the girl manages to win by reaching the rooftop. Yahiro asks what prize she wants, and she asks to only be considered a rival to Takushima. Her partner appears at that moment and takes her away. Upon leaving the party, Takushima continues to insist on what Yahiro told him, embarrassing her, and she refuses to say it. The next day, Hikari returns to class and meets her friend, who asks her how the party went. However, when Takushima arrives, she gets nervous, remembering Yahiro's words, so she runs away. Later, Takushima finds her hiding in Class SA. He knows she's upset because of something Yahiro said at the party, but despite her efforts, she can't bring herself to say it, so she pretends everything is fine. Later, the group decides to plan a trip, but everyone has different ideas, causing a problem because each person wants to do what they like and go where they prefer. Takushima proposes a contest. The winner will decide where to go. Some are not happy because they think Takushima will win, but he claims he's only doing it to find out what Yahiro told Hikari. She feels trapped since she can't refuse a contest. The following day, the competition begins with a race. Akira sets the rules, giving some an advantage to start first, while others with handicaps start later. Hikari starts third, and last is Takushima, who is fully covered and tied to a chair. When the race begins, the first 3 students move ahead as planned. Hikari feels she has an advantage over her rival, but he remains nonchalant, reminding her of their agreement, while the other members follow Akira's plan. After 2 minutes, it's Takushima's turn to join the race. With his strength, he manages to free himself from the chair and starts running. Along the way, he encounters a trap where Akira and Tadashi are waiting. Kei can't believe he fell into it, but he escapes and continues. However, he falls into another trap, dropping several meters, but manages to escape again. Akira gets frustrated that her plans aren't working and some of her teammates abandon the plan. Meanwhile, Hikari is surprised she hasn't encountered anyone despite covering a considerable distance. After Takushima escapes several traps, Akira gets very upset and blows up the bridge where he was. She claims she didn't want to finish him off but felt forced to. However, from the smoke caused by the explosion, Kei emerges and continues in the race, which shocks Akira. Later, Hikari finally meets up with Takushima. She realizes he's genuinely interested in knowing what happened at the party, which she can't understand why. Meanwhile, Akira asks Tadashi to use the secret weapon since there's no other option. Later, the protagonist reaches the finish line, but her rival arrives first and forces her to tell him what Yahiro told her. Feeling embarrassed, she agrees to say it but is interrupted by Tadashi, who enters through the window on a motorcycle, crashing through tables. Takishima gets upset and teaches him a lesson. Later, he confesses to Hikari that he was worried Yahiro might have said something that could cause problems for him and apologizes for pressuring her to reveal it through the contest. She is surprised that he was only concerned about her and decides to tell him the truth. Yahiro told her that he was in love with her. This revelation relieves Hikari, but it leaves Takishima speechless. The following day, the members of Class SA head to Hawaii for their vacation. Some are excited, but they notice Takishima isn't. In fact, he's still thinking about what his classmate told him earlier, that he might be in love with her. Upon arrival, they head to the hotel to drop off their luggage. Akira then suggests going on an excursion and shopping, an idea everyone likes. However, Ryu mentions he has to attend a meeting with one of his father's clients, and Takishima isn't in the mood. Despite this, the group goes out to stroll and enjoy their first day in the place. Later on, Ryu regrets what he's about to say as it seems they've been assigned to take care of a boy named Chitose, who is the son of a family client. At that moment, the boy appears but seems to be plotting something. Nevertheless, he asks them to fulfill his wish and starts pretending they're a family, assigning each student a role. Kei and Akira play the parents, and unfortunately, the protagonist becomes the family pet. Ryu later apologizes for the situation, knowing it's preventing them from enjoying the trip, but everyone resolves to help him. During dinner, they all gather around the table as a family, although Hikari finds it unfair that she has to eat on the floor. The boy justifies it by calling her a dog, prompting Takishima to say she eats beside him, which the girl finds excessive and strange. Nonetheless, he decides to sit with her so she won't be alone, but Akira intervenes between them. Meanwhile, Chitose pretends to be upset and says he's going to his room, so Ryu suggests staying with him, which displeases the Yamamoto brothers. As dusk falls, the protagonist decides to take a stroll along the beach, pondering why she has to be a dog. She encounters Chitose, who is watching a happy family. She tries to cheer him up, but the boy only bothers her with his words. The next day, everyone heads to the beach, but Hikari wears a dog costume. Nonetheless, she's enthusiastic and determined to improve the boy's mood. However, it seems her approach annoys him, so he asks Ryu to fetch him a drink. Despite this, Hikari takes him along and tries to give him attention. Later, Chitose gets upset and asks her why she's doing this. She explains that she made a promise and wants to keep it, so he assigns her a task, which she accepts to make him happy. However, the other kids don't like this, causing Chitose to blame himself and decide to leave. But just as he's about to go, he sees Hikari rushing towards him with coconuts he requested. Despite this, Chitose asks her for something else, which she accepts. Later, Hikari removes the costume and dives into the water. Upon reaching a rock, she climbs it to reach some flowers Chitose asked for. However, as she reaches out to get them, she slips. Takishima, who followed her out of concern, catches her just in time. Afterward, when she delivers orchids to Chitose, he runs off unexpectedly. Seeing Ryu with the Yamamoto brothers, Chitose comments that he plans to take Ryu with him so he won't enjoy the vacation with them. Megumi gets upset and is about to shout, but before she does, Hikari arrives and covers the boy's ears to prevent him from getting hurt. After this, the boy notices everyone's state, and Takishima asks what he's up to. However, Hikari is worried about him and asks if he's hurt, surprising Chitose, who finally gives up. The next day, the kids mention that Chitose left early without saying goodbye. However, Hikari isn't there either. At the beach, Chitose meets someone and says they're all good people, especially Hikari. At that moment, the protagonist arrives and sees the boy with Yahiro, who turns out to be his brother. Yahiro thanks her for looking after his younger brother and tells her that some of his classmates knew about the situation, but still invites her to their villa, which she accepts because they both want to talk. After the events, the other members worry because Hikari hasn't returned, but then a call comes in which Takishima answers. Yahiro informs him that the girl is with him because she wants to ask him some questions, although he has no intention of letting her go. After the call ends, Takishima informs his companions, prompting Ryu to confess to everyone that Chitose is Yahiro's brother, leaving everyone surprised. Now their priority is to rescue Hikari, so Akira wants to go find her, but Kei doesn't allow it and ends up going with Tadashi, while the others wait for their return. At Yahiro's villa, Chitose asks him to release Hikari, since she's not involved in their problems and knows what he's up to, but his older brother tells him to keep quiet and not interfere. When the boys are alone, the protagonist asks Yahiro if he, Takishima, and Akira fought because they seemed like friends in the past, but he doesn't respond, thinking she's just gossiping. She later understands she shouldn't meddle, but he confesses he brought her to his villa to use her as bait. She later does by locking her in his cell. She's very upset and threatens to break the cell open unless he releases her, but he refuses. He doesn't understand why his brother and Akira care so much about her, but instead offers her a way to satisfy Takishima as a reward for being his bait. Later, Chitose sneaks out of his room planning to steal the cell key from his brother to free Hikari. Meanwhile, Takishima and Tadashi arrive at the mansion and are welcomed by Yahiro, who is friendly with them. He asks his companion to leave them alone so they can talk, but informs the mansion's owner that Akira couldn't come, which annoys him. Meanwhile, Chitose manages to rescue his friend and wonders how they managed to capture her so easily. She confesses she didn't expect it, as they were simply going to talk, though she doesn't know why she did it. The boy tells her it was because of Akira. Later, while Tadashi enjoys the night in the garden, he sees his companion running past and tells her they were worried about her, so they went to rescue her. Chitose asks them to flee while he distracts the guards. On the way, the protagonist confesses to her companion that before returning to Kei, she wants to talk to her friend. Later, the boys return with the others and Akira is glad to see her friend, but the protagonist asks her what happened with Yahiro. However, she doesn't want to answer, so without any response, the girl returns to Takishima's villa. Before that, Akira asks her for a favor. Meanwhile, the boys continue talking. Takishima tells her that apparently he's interested in all sorts of methods to see Akira, even using his brother and Hikari by locking her up. However, she refuses as they made a promise not to see each other again. This upsets the young man who threatens to destroy her family since he has more power. But Kei only provokes him to keep him angry and says his family and mansion are better than theirs, even proposing to buy the villa in exchange for releasing his companion. Defeated, the young man has no choice but to take his enemy to the cell, but they notice Hikari is no longer there, which confuses Takishima. However, at that moment, the protagonist appears and apologizes for escaping without permission, though she hands him a note from Akira threatening him if he does anything to her friend. Hikari feels satisfied that her role as bait served a purpose, but Yahiro still thinks she's strange, while Kei seems upset but ultimately confesses he was worried about her and is glad she's safe. Later, the boys return to their lodging, but the protagonist notices that Takishima is upset because she always makes them worry about her. Not knowing what to do, she remembers Yahiro's advice and kisses her companion on the cheek, confessing that the boy told her to do it as it cheers people up. But she realizes it didn't work, so she says she'll do the same to Tadashi next time. Kei, acting strangely, says he won't be able to hold back next time. The next day, the boys return to Japan but lament not being able to enjoy their vacation much. The next day, Takishima is in the library looking at vacation photos but can only see Hikari while remembering the kiss she gave him. At that moment, the protagonist arrives and gets startled as the young man quickly closes his laptop so she doesn't see what he was doing. Nonetheless, she mentions she came to personally challenge him in the upcoming trials. Kei accepts, teasingly grabbing her hair and saying that if he wins, he'll have her for a day as he had promised not to hold back next time. After this incident, Hikari leaves the place upset, not understanding what's going on or what her companion told her. At that moment, Akira appears, desperate, and asks them to return to class. Upon arrival, she mentioned she was about to prepare tea for everyone but noticed the place was destroyed despite having repaired it after Tadashi entered with his motorcycle. Takishima suggests that it might have been students from the school who don't like the SA class, but Ryu suggests they shouldn't worry too much and cleaning the place to prevent anyone from getting hurt is more important for the moment. While the protagonist looks for cleaning supplies, the three students who always praise her arrive to ask for a photo. However, Hikari stops them, stating they are normal people like everyone else. Later, Nakamoto appears, who was suspended because of the SA, and challenges her, which she accepts. In reality, though, the student wants Ryu to take the challenge as he's in 7th place. Later, Hikari visits Ryu, who is worried because he accepted the challenge instead of his friend. Upon entering his house, she notices the Yamamoto brothers are there and he takes care of them as if they were his own children, which surprises her. When they are alone, as he shows her where the animals are kept, the protagonist asks him if he likes challenges, but he says no as he is happy being part of the SA. The next day, the SA class members find the place destroyed again, but Hikari doesn't want to stand idly by, so she goes in search of Nakamoto and finds him, asking if he's responsible for what's happening in their class. The boy pretends not to know what she's talking about as he only thinks about the agreed-upon challenge. She tries to tell him that Ryu isn't interested in a duel as he's not that kind of person. But at that moment, the boy appears, and she confronts him, saying she should have just asked him directly if he wanted to face off with him. He agrees but tries to hit Nakamoto for destroying his place, though Takishima stops him, not wanting his companion to be suspended. Ryu then asks that if he wins, the owner leaves his class alone. That night, Hikari visits Ryu and the Yamamoto brothers, feeling responsible for involving her companion in a challenge and wanting to help him stay focused. However, they refuse to let her cook, so they send her to take care of the animals on the premises, feeling inadequate for not helping in any way. Meanwhile, Nakamoto has something in mind to win the challenge. The next day, Nakamoto is at the location to start the competition, with all the SA members there to support their friend. However, Ryu hasn't arrived yet, and it's time for the challenge to begin. However, the young man calls one of the boys to tell him he'll be late because he has a family matter to attend to with Yahiro's family. Takishima understands that everything was planned by the student to win. Nakamoto confirms this and, with no time to waste, decides to start answering the contest questions. Later, while Nakamoto continues answering the questions, the SA class members are worried about their friend, but he arrives at that moment and calmly takes his place, reviewing all the questions while his rival tries to distract him. However, this doesn't deter him as he quickly starts jotting down the answers, surprising everyone by memorizing the questions in seconds. When time runs out, Ryu manages to answer all the questions, winning the challenge. However, Nakamoto doesn't accept it and accuses him of cheating, attempting to hit him. But Ryu stops him, and while he wants to hit back, he stops to ask him to leave the SA class alone. After the events, Hikari feels relieved that everything turned out well, but her thoughts are interrupted by Takushima, who reminds her not to forget they have a challenge with the exams and especially not to forget the deal they made. The girl gets nervous and says she still remembers. However, after the exams, Hikari notices she once again came in second place. Kei approaches her, takes her hand, and says that now she belongs to him for a day. After Takushima asks Hikari to fulfill her promise, they are interrupted by a helicopter landing from which Oji, the young man's father, emerges. He asks Takushima to attend an important meeting as preferred by their clients, but even if he refuses, due to his commitment to the protagonist, security personnel restrain him and lift him into the helicopter without issue, leaving Hikari alone. However, at that moment, Tadashi arrives and asks her to be his girlfriend. Tadashi explains that he had a meeting with his mother, who asked him to attend a marriage interview with an important family because she wants him to marry their daughter under certain conditions. To evade this, he claimed he couldn't do it because he has a girlfriend, even though he doesn't, and he can't refuse because his mother always threatens him with bungee. After Hikari hears all this, she reluctantly agrees. Later, the group returns to class where Akira awaits them with a delicious cake to celebrate Takushima's departure and her chance to spend time with her best friend. She suggests meeting up the next day, but Hikari declines, saying she has a date, which upsets Akira. She tries to find out who the date is with, but after Tadashi begs her not to say anything, Hikari simply says it's a secret. The next morning, Hikari asks her parents for recommendations on what to wear for a date. Her mother was prepared for this day and gives her a skirt, while her father advises her not to let her guard down with Takushima just because it's a date, but Hikari denies that he's her date. When the two finally meet, they are ready to start their date, but Hikari wonders why he chose her when Akira would have been perfect. Tadashi shows her a camera to capture evidence of their date. As they walk hand in hand, Akira and the others watch from a limousine and she appears very upset. At a restaurant, the couple tries to observe other couples to mimic their behavior, but feel embarrassed when they see one couple acting intimately. This annoys Akira, who throws a plate at Tadashi to make him release her friend, but they don't realize the waiters are their classmates. Realizing that kind of date isn't for them, they decide to continue their way, so they go for a motorcycle ride to the beach to gather crabs and cook them, which alarms the other couples. Later, they arrive in the forest where Tadashi says he likes to go, even though it can be dangerous at times. The class follows them, but Akira falls into quicksand, and after seeing how dangerous it is, they decide to go home. At the end of the date, they encounter Tadashi's mother, Kurino Sumire. Hikari introduces herself and confirms they are dating, showing the evidence, but Sumire asks them to confirm it with a kiss, surprising them. Hikari is willing to do it to help her friend, but Tadashi confesses he doesn't have a girlfriend and doesn't want to get married or have a girlfriend right now. Sumire smiles, knowing it was all a lie, and says she will cancel the proposal despite it already being canceled because the girl's family refused to meet. This leaves the group speechless. At the end of the day, Tadashi apologizes to Hikari for everything that happened. At that moment, Takushima arrives by helicopter after hearing from Yahiro that the protagonist had a date with his friend. Kei grabs Hikari and reminds her not to forget the deal they made, but she gets upset, and nevertheless, Kei takes her away with him. On the night Takushima left, the young man felt tired and stressed from all the things he had to do. Despite his desire to leave, his father asked him to visit another client the next day, which irritated him enough to kick his father out of the room. At that moment, he received a call from Yahiro, who informed him that Hikari had a date. The next day, he went in his helicopter to fetch her forcibly because he owed her what they had promised. Once in the helicopter, the protagonist sits far from her friend, thinking he's upset, but he's not. Takushima mentions how this situation reminds him of a scene from a movie where a man tells a woman that no matter where they go, he could go to hell with her. He moves closer to Hikari, who feels nervous, but he ends up falling into her arms, revealing he has a fever. Upon arriving at his house, Takushima is in bed, cared for by Hikari and Sui. Sui explains that his brother accumulates stress due to work and studies. Hikari decides to prepare something for him to eat, but the kitchen staff watches fearfully from afar. After finishing, Hikari brings the dish, but Sui forbids her from giving it to him because it doesn't look good. Nonetheless, Takushima decides to eat it, which doesn't go well, and Hikari accidentally hurts him while trying to bring ice to lower his fever, ultimately soaking and injuring Kei. Despite this, he remains unconcerned and asks her to help him change clothes, but Sui arrives at an inconvenient moment. Later, Hikari is on the balcony feeling a bit sad when Takushima, still feverish, appears, saying he wanted some fresh air and acknowledging that she's truly a good and kind person. However, he ends up in her arms again. She eventually persuades him to sleep while she plans to leave, but he asks her to stay and ends up falling asleep. When he wakes up and finds Hikari in the room, he fears she left but discovers her sleeping on the couch. She wakes up, sees him, and goes to check on him, relieved to learn her parents gave her permission to stay. She suggests they go out and have fun on Sunday to relieve his stress, surprising him with her unexpected proposal. When he asks where she wants to go, she surprises him again by saying it doesn't matter where as long as they have fun, just like he imagined. He reflects that she's the only person capable of stirring his heart and the reason he enjoys himself when they're together. When she asks where he wants to go, he responds with anywhere, ending with a kiss that leaves the protagonist stunned, then annoyed, leading her to start complaining to him. Days later, Akira is at her mansion when she receives a delivery from the school president, who instructs them to wear the uniforms provided and attend classes at the assigned school for a few days. Otherwise, they'll be expelled. On the designated day, the private school students are excited to receive elite students until they arrive and are amazed at how good they look in the uniforms. However, the SA class members are not enthusiastic, with Akira even hitting Tadashi, blaming him. He explains they just wanted to spend some time in regular classes, and she reluctantly accepts, enjoying seeing her friends in uniforms. However, they find out they've been split into groups for different classes, decided randomly by the principal. Luckily for Akira, she ends up with her friend, which makes her happy. As classes begin, each group introduces themselves to their new classmates. The girls are charmed by the boys, finding some a bit strange. However, a girl enters Hikari and Akira's classroom, leaving Akira speechless because she resembles a childhood friend. The student introduces herself as Oikawa Yu, offering her hand, but Akira recalls being told by the girl she hated her, so she slaps her hand away, surprising everyone. Hikari tries to smooth things over. During break, Hikari worries about her friend and decides to get her some tea, thinking that might help. Meanwhile, Takushima is surrounded by classmates but remains distant until he sees Hikari pass by. He approaches her warmly to ask if she needs anything, but she ignores him, leaving him speechless and mocked by his new classmates. Meanwhile, Akira remains in class feeling down, and Yu approaches her to ask what's wrong and suggests they become friends, but Akira refuses, troubled by bad memories. After break, Hikari returns to class through the window and gives her friend a box of tea to cheer her up. Akira hugs her in thanks, which annoys some students who think they're being ignored just because of their wealth, upsetting Hikari. During second break, Tadashi finds his friends alone in a corner and reassures them that things will work out after the first day. However, Akira gets angry and hits him, which their classmates witness. They advise Tadashi to hang out with other people, making Akira feel worse. However, Tadashi responds positively to her hitting him, smiling at Akira, who blushes. Takishima arrives and notices Yu, mentioning she resembles an old friend named Sayo. But on closer inspection, he realizes they're different people. He laughs, understanding what's going on with Akira, and advises her that the past isn't the same as the present, asking her what she should do in situations like these. She realizes she always used her magic to make others happy, so she calls her mansion and has several cars sent over, inviting her classmates to her home, which they accept due to her hospitality. Later, all the students are at Akira's mansion enjoying a rich and unusual tea, which surprises everyone. She apologizes for her behavior in class and approaches Yu, explaining the resemblance to her old friend and asking to be friends. Akira recounts how she used to play with Kei and Yahiro as a child due to their parents' work. Yahiro would constantly order her around even in kindergarten, scaring away other children who feared him. She invited other girls having fun until she met Sayo during a vacation when Sayo got lost in her house. Fortunately, Yahiro wasn't around, and they became friends, making her very happy until Yahiro intervened again and turned Sayo against her. She's determined not to let it happen again and ruin her new friendship. Meanwhile, Hikari is happy her friend is back but gets nervous when Takishima asks her what they'll do on Sunday. However, Yahiro is aware of what's happening in the SA and knows about the similarities between Sayo and Yu. 3 days have passed since the SA class spent their classes at a regular school, so now it's time to say goodbye. However, the other students are sad because Akira has to leave, but to compensate for the nice days spent there, she invites everyone to her mansion. Once there, the girls are amazed by how beautiful and huge her wardrobe is, but Yu tries to ask her classmates to be discreet, to which Akira reassures her that there's no problem as she cares for them. When everyone leaves, an agent informs Akira that a suspicious car was outside the school, prompting her to give an order to her agent. The next day, Yu is ready for class, but is surprised when she leaves home to find a large car of Akira's agent waiting for her, following Akira's instructions. In her class, the other students wonder why only she was sent a car for her travels, while others talk about Akira's jewelry, joking that she probably wouldn't notice if some went missing, which they could sell to get rich. The following day, Akira receives Yu at her mansion to spend the afternoon, wanting to protect her as she couldn't protect her childhood friend Sayo. When the SA student arrives, she asks her to wait while she prepares tea, but Yu takes advantage of the moment to enter her room where Akira keeps her jewelry. When Akira returns with the tea, Yu tells her that she didn't come to have fun. She wants her to stop sending her cars and bodyguards every day as she's embarrassed by it. She mentions she'll visit again, prompting Akira to remember when Sayo came to her house crying, saying she hated her because Yahiro had threatened to fire her father if they remained friends, leading to her hatred. Akira realizes this time it was her fault, not Yahiro's. The next day, everyone in the SA class notices Akira is depressed, so Tadashi tries to provoke her. But when she doesn't react, he gets stressed and drags her away. Along the way, she realizes what's happening and angrily asks him to let her go. Hikari was about to arrive but decides to hide upon seeing the situation. Tadashi confesses he's bad with complicated things but doesn't like seeing her upset, trying to cheer her up. She tells him he ruined her friendship with Yue and only wanted to protect her, saying he should apologize, but Akira finds it hard. He helps her understand she just needs to say sorry, no matter how difficult. She realizes there's always been one person capable of stopping her tears, but now there are two, and she hugs him, leaving Tadashi stunned while Hikari, seeing this, feels relieved and decides to leave them alone. Later, Yu visits a jewelry store planning to sell the jewelry she stole from Akira, but is interrupted by Yahiro, who realizes what happened. He tells her he investigated her and knows she has many problems, explaining why she tried to befriend Akira and take advantage of her. Meanwhile, Tadashi sets out to reunite his friend with Yu, arriving at her house where her mother receives him, saying Yu isn't home. Akira suspects Yahiro is involved in their move and perhaps caused her friend's father to be fired, so she tells the woman she'll handle the situation. In the jewelry store, Yahiro says he'll return the gems as if nothing happened, but asks Yu to stop seeing Akira as she's a nuisance. She wants to apologize, but is accidentally pushed into the street where a car is approaching. Later, Yu thanks Yahiro for saving her from the accident, but he asks her to follow their deal and stay away from Akira, despite her desire to apologize. He doesn't want bad people around his friend, knowing how it feels to have fake friends only after money. Akira arrives and sees Yu injured, immediately blaming Yahiro not only for the accident but also for her father's dismissal and forcing her to leave the country. Yu tries to speak, but Yahiro interrupts, remembering how the girls who played with her were only interested in the gifts they got, so he promised to protect her. Yahiro admits he was responsible for everything, but Tadashi intervenes, asking his friend to apologize to Yu as she's right there, saying it's not complicated. He also tells Yahiro not to silence the student as it won't help. Yu tells Akira that Yahiro saved her from an accident and her father was fired before they met, forcing them to return to his hometown due to debts. She apologizes for stealing the jewelry to help her family, surprising Akira, who smiles, approaches her and says if Yu had told her from the beginning, she could have helped, showing her true care. She also apologizes to Yahiro for misjudging him, leaving him speechless but satisfied with her words. The next day, Akira tells her classmates what happened, including how she helped Yu's father get a job in her company to prevent them from moving, allowing her to continue attending classes. She takes a gift and gives it to Tadashi as a sign of gratitude, making him happy to receive pastries, while the others don't understand what's going on, though they notice Hikari and Kei are absent. One morning, the protagonist tries to invite one of her classmates to do something on Sunday, but only because she remembered her promise to Takushima and apparently doesn't want to be alone with him. However, at that moment, the young man appears and says they have plans, knowing she was trying to invite someone else. Since they'll be alone, he takes it as a date and resolves to make an effort. Their classmates are astonished upon learning they'll have a date and don't understand what's happening. At night, Takishima's father is informed that his son still hasn't been found, so he orders to find him and bring him home as they have a meeting. The next day is the day of the date and Hikari is ready. She plans to show everything she learned from reading an investigation she did. She tries to act cute and flirtatious after arriving late, but Takishima is the one who behaves that way, leaving her surprised. Determined not to give up and let him win in this situation, she plans another surprise by covering his eyes. However, Takishima senses the presence of secret agents and starts getting annoyed. When Hikari approaches, he mistakes her for one of them, making her see him upset. Despite her concern, he tries to continue their date, acting sweetly, even holding her hand and offering to be her guide while they have fun. However, they are still being watched by agents. The protagonist starts to think the young man is strange but feels a great tension coming from him. At that moment, Takishima receives a call from the company, so he tells Hikari to rest in the cafe until he returns, leaving her thinking. Later, Takishima deals with a couple of agents but more appear. He won't let them ruin their date, but Hikari arrives at that moment, upset that he didn't tell her what was happening. Still, Kei takes her away because these agents are professionals and could hurt her, despite her desire to fight. While they are hiding, Takishima notices she's crying. She expresses her frustration for not realizing he was in this situation, feeling she's not a good enough rival for him. He apologizes, saying it's his fault because his father arranged a marriage interview for him, but he refused to go. Hikari insists he should go because it's important. After hearing her words, Takishima decides to go, but as he starts walking, she stops him, and they gaze at each other for a few seconds. She blushes, realizing the situation, unsure of what she's doing. At that moment, Oji finds them and insists Takishima go to the marriage interview, but he's surprised to find his son with Hikari. A girl named Ushikubo Sakura arrives and confronts Takishima for going on a date instead of attending their arranged marriage interview. After introducing herself, Oji is concerned and asks not to inform his father, but she's only interested in not wasting more time on the date. She takes Hikari with her. On the way, the protagonist wonders why she brought her along. Sakura explains she's not interested in Takushima, but found Hikari intriguing and thinks it's strange she's with him. She asked about their relationship, and Hikari confirms they're rivals. They are interrupted by two boys trying to invite them for drinks, but Sakura gets angry and deals with one of them, saying she hates liars. Later, they have tea and talk. Oshikubo mentions she decided long ago to marry someone who fits her ideal type. Hikari tells her Takushima is a type of prince, although not her type as she mentioned to him. She's willing to help Sakura with whatever she needs, so Sakura asks her to find out Takashima's type to make their next meeting easier. This leaves the protagonist thinking, but she agrees. The next day, the protagonist arrives at class and finds some of her classmates, but not Takashima, so she was looking for him. She asks him about his ideal type when she finds him, but he gets upset and refuses to answer such questions, leaving her alone. However, this doesn't stop her, as she starts asking each of her classmates, but none knows what to tell her. She ends up confronting Takashima and challenges him to a duel. If she wins, he has to answer. However, he realizes it was Sakura who asked her to do it, so he refuses again, saying it would confuse her after stopping him from going to the interview. She feels nervous and simply says it was to annoy him, running away, leaving him annoyed and frozen, though she doesn't know why she did it either. Later, the protagonist meets Sakura and tells her she couldn't get any information. After another request, she agrees. Sakura says she'll use it for her next date, as both their parents arrange another marriage interview. She asks Hikari not to keep information from her as she dislikes liars, leaving Hikari with no choice but to accept while thinking about the interview. Later, Yahiro finds out that Takashima and Hikari spent Sunday together, so he tells Sakura that he finally admitted his feelings, which displeases her. The next day, Hikari confronts Takashima again, but he doesn't hold back and confesses he likes normal girls, knowing otherwise he would be in trouble. Later, as she's pondering why her classmate did it, Sakura appears, having learned the truth. According to them, they had several dates, and he doesn't want to tell her the truth about his ideal type. The protagonist tries to confess, but she can't as she starts remembering and shedding tears. At that moment, their classmates arrive. Hikari is confused by Sakura's gaze, but she's enamored with young Yamamoto, having found her prince and forgotten about Kei, which Hikari didn't expect, although Megumi isn't happy about it. After what happened, Sakura falls in love with Jun, saying he's ideal for her and perfect. Megumi and Ryu are astonished and start to panic. However, when the girl asks him out, Jun apologizes and refuses. Later, during the SDA class meeting, Akira starts teasing Takashima about going on a date with Hikari. After the appearance of the engagement girl, her friend becomes more interested in finding her ideal type, which annoys Takashima. He warns her not to make an enemy out of him. Meanwhile, Jun feels somewhat concerned because despite rejecting a date, Sakura insists he wait for her plan. Ryu and Megumi are worried. Then Nakara receives a message from Oji inviting them all to a barbecue, which Kei tries to dissuade, but everyone accepts, including Hikari, who is pensive about everything that's happened, although Tadashi is forced to go. When they finally arrive, they find themselves on an island and are welcomed by a strange man, who turns out to be Sakura's father, arriving just then to embrace June. The man explains he asked Oji for help to organize the lunch because his daughter wanted to make friends with that class. Akira and Takishima notes because of Jun, who is more concerned. Ryu approaches to give him a whistle in case he needs it. While the food is being prepared, the boys have to help, but Sakura tries to use every opportunity to be with June. He immediately uses his whistle, and each time Ryu and Megumi appear to keep the girl away from him. However, her father notices this and decides to draw lots to form pairs. Everyone objects except the protagonist, who finds it fun. When Kei's name is drawn, he changes his mind about his earlier statement about forming pairs. Then it's Sakura's turn, and with her father's help, she picks Jun's name. Megumi partners with Tadashi, who isn't much help, and Akira with Ryu. Later, the boys worry about Jun since they don't see him around. He tries to ask for help, but Sakura throws away his whistle. Akira tries to make Ryu understand he's being overprotective, but he confesses he made a promise he can't talk about. Meanwhile, the couple is in the forest, but Jun eventually gets annoyed that she won't leave him alone and tells her so, which only makes Sakura more enamored. She tries to go with him, but she trips, and just before falling, he catches her. In gratitude, she tries to kiss him, but Jun, upon looking at her, recalls an old memory and pushes her away, asking her not to do it anymore. Sakura tries to pretend nothing happened and tries to hug him, but unable to. She asks if he likes someone else. Upon learning that he doesn't, she gets excited because he's her type and an honest boy, but he gets upset and says he isn't. Upon their return, they run into a group, but Sakura's father realizes her state and encourages her not to give up, shocking the others. As they're about to eat something, Jun gets dirty and the agents grab him. Sakura approaches to clean him with a kiss, but just as she's about to, Ryu and Megumi leap at her to stop her. But her father stops them and scolds them, asking why they interfere when his daughter is a good girl who has probably kissed him on the cheek before, which Takashima confirms. Nevertheless, the agents keep trying to catch Jun, so his sister and a companion deal with them, and asks the young man to escape. But the man puts more agents, although Hikari is willing to help his friend and also says that kisses are only given to people who like them and don't have to be forced, which makes Kei feel excited and also decides to help. When the boys finish off some, Jun tries to flee, but Sakura is in his way and says she won't if he doesn't want to, so he shouldn't flee. However, the boy says he wasn't entirely honest because he isn't running away because he hates her, but because he has a secret. So he asks her to kiss him, but if he acts strangely, she should flee. She approaches him and gives him a kiss on the cheek, which ends up making the boy faint. Upon waking up, he begins to open his shirt a bit, which surprises everyone and begins to speak and act differently and flirtatiously, thanking the girl who kissed him by winking, which leaves Akira and Sakura in love, leaving the rest without understanding anything. Ryo explains that he has a chronic illness because when he was little, he was hypnotized through a television channel, and when he was little, he attracted other girls, which his girlfriend didn't like, ending up upset, and since then, they decided to help him. Finally, Megumi uses her voice to return him to normal. Upon waking up, Sakura is by his side and tells Jun that it is surprising, which pleases him two personalities. This excites the boy as he thought she would also flee. However, with everything that happened, they failed to do the barbecues, so now they will have to prepare rice. The next day, Hikari arrives at school, but Sakura appears because she wants to see Jun and also because she wants to ask him a favor. However, at that moment, the Yamamoto brothers and Ryu appear, so she runs after her crush, but he evades her while the others interfere, reacting reflexively since the boy still isn't accustomed to her. Later, Sakura suggests organizing a festival at their school and asks for the SEA members' help, who all agree. However, Tadashi notices Akira's distraction and approaches her to ask if she'll help. She blushes, seemingly liking him, but she feels he's too close and asks him not to approach her if he'll help with the festival. Then, Hikari is with her friend washing some dishes, but she's distracted, still thinking about Tadashi and the moments they shared. When she snaps out of it, she starts acting strangely, which her friend notices. Later, the protagonist asks Kei if he's excited about the festival because Akira seems down, but Sakura claims to have something that will cheer her up. However, it's not the case, and everyone is stunned when they see the bus they have to board to deliver invitations to the festival, which none of them wants to do. Upon reaching their destination, Hikari greets them dressed as a rabbit, but it's not pleasant for anyone, and they don't even want to play along with the tour of Kokusen's school. However, Akira ends up smiling upon seeing the school garden, where the flowers are well cared for, which is more than enough for the protagonist, who wanted to see her friend smile. Then Sakura appears and takes them all to the school hall, where they are received with great elegance by Yahiro, leaving everyone amazed by the reception. Everyone starts chatting with each student, although some are not having a good time. Hikari looks like her classmates, but an attractive boy approaches her, inviting her to travel to the moon. However, Takushima appears annoyed and removes the boy from the place. Yahiro notices this and asks him to choose the girl he wants, so Kei picks the rabbit. Later, the protagonist takes off her costume and tells Takushima that she wore the costume because Yahiro confirmed that Kei would be speechless upon seeing it, though it wasn't so. She then sees that her friend isn't having fun, so she starts to worry, but her companion lets her know that it's not due to the festival, but to something that's depressing her, while Akira can't help but look at and think about Tadashi, although Yahiro notices this from a distance. Later, the boys can see the things at the festival, so some start to enjoy it, but Yahiro asks them to help, so the SA class members are responsible for welcoming guests and serving them. So far, everything goes well. Then Hikari notices that Yahiro wants to talk to Akira, but he refuses to accept it and asks her to return to work. The protagonist insists that everyone should have fun and enjoy the festival, so he must talk to his friends so that she can enjoy the day. But then a scream is heard, and when they arrive at the place, Akira says she cannot find her cell phone. Therefore, Sakura tries to get the guests' attention and announces that whoever finds the girl's cell phone will receive a prize, encouraging everyone to participate. However, in a matter of seconds, the entire school was involved in some incidents, but this does not stop Hikari from competing since she loves competitions, while Sakura says that she will do it for the prize, leaving Yahiro and Akira alone. When they are in the hall, they realize that everyone went out to look for the phone, so the young man tries to take advantage of the opportunity and talk to her as Hikari said. However, at that moment, Tadashi gets up from the couch and asks Yahiro to leave her alone, as he now has the opportunity to escape. This excites the girl, but she ends up annoyed, which the childhood boy accepts, trying to know what was happening to his friend as he knows her for a long time, but she still refuses to tell. Later, the protagonist continues looking for her friend's cell phone but comes across Yahiro and asks him to search together, but Takushima takes his partner away from him. Then both realize that the young man was also looking for the phone, so they approach him, but they hear some students say they found the phone and don't plan to return it, so the three confront them. The boys get scared when they see them and immediately want to return the object, but they stumble and the phone is thrown into the air. Luckily, Yahiro catches it. He asks Kei to hand over the phone, but the young man refuses to do so and leaves, while Hikari asks him to do so because he will have the opportunity to talk to Akira. Upon arriving at the hall, Yahiro hands the phone to Akira, But they don't have time to talk because Hikari appears to say that he made an effort to find it, which makes him nervous, and she can see the peels that remain on his clothes after falling. The girl starts laughing at them and thanks him for what he did, which makes the boy happy. Later, Akira talks on the phone to confirm her date with a boy when she finishes the call and sees that Tadashi was listening, so he says that was the reason she was depressed. She tries to tell him that she doesn't want to go on the date, but upon hearing that the young man tries to encourage her to go well and ensure that he is a good boy with whom she will meet, she hits him because she gets upset, and crying she says that if she is not interested, then she will meet thousands of boys. After what happened, Akira runs away from the place crying because Tadashi has no idea about her feelings. Some of their classmates notice her fleeing, but she trips over Sakura, who ends up crying even more and hugging her. Later on, the other members of the SEA class continue with their tasks, but Kei notices that the Yamamoto brothers rush towards Hikari. They inform the protagonist that Akira ran away while crying and they don't know what happened to her. At that moment, Tadashi appears, and they decide to ask him if he knows anything. However, he tries to play it off and prefers to leave. Nonetheless, Kei notices his demeanor from a distance. Meanwhile, Akira confides in Sakura about what happened while eating as much as she can out of frustration. She decides to find a student at the festival to teach him a lesson. Sakura supports her, as they have been constantly interrupted by Jun, Ryu, and Megumi whenever Akira tries to be with them. So both girls join forces to get revenge. The boys remain at their posts, but Tadashi is distracted, unable to stop thinking about what happened. He recalls a childhood memory with Akira. Later, he asks Hikari to handle the drinks while he goes to the bathroom. Takishima suggests he use another bathroom to calm down and asks the protagonist to look after Tadashi. Meanwhile, Akira and Sakura organize a meeting for dates attended by several boys. When a boy approaches, Sakura gets angry, but Tadashi arrives and tells her that he overheard Megumi saying she saw Akira crying while running, realizing it was his fault. He apologizes to Akira, who initially feels angry but then starts to apologize for herself, seemingly blaming herself. When he tries to hold her, she doesn't allow it and leaves. While the others are in the classroom, Megumi arrives with news. Sakura is hitting Tadashi because he made her friend cry and she won't forgive him. Hikari arrives late to find Tadashi defeated, but as he leaves the fountain where he fell, he meets Yahiro. Later, Yahiro tends to Tadashi's wounds and they are seen by Megumi. Tadashi asks his rival to be gentler, but Yahiro isn't interested. However, it triggers a memory of when Akira and Tadashi ran away together on his birthday, where he took her to a place full of lights that looked like stars. She was happy because neither of their parents nor Yahiro were there, and from that day on, she fell in love with him. However, she believes she only caused him trouble, and when Hikari sees Akira crying, her friend recommends apologizing as it's never too late, and they have been friends for a long time. While everyone is at the festival, Akira goes to see Tadashi but notices he is happy and asks him to accompany her to that place they went as children. They take a motorcycle and leave. Meanwhile, at the festival, they have a big bonfire and Jun approaches Sakura just to tell her how beautiful she looks. Takushima saves Hikari from getting burned. Upon arriving in the city to see it, she remains somewhat anxious, but she reminds him of the gift she gave him as a token of gratitude. They start dancing in that place, but she gets nervous and decides to go for juices, feeling calmer. However, while there, she confesses that she likes Tadashi. Unbeknownst to her, he was behind her and heard everything, which surprises her, and she simply hits him to escape. As he tries to approach her despite being bruised, Akira decides not to run away again and confesses the truth while crying. Tadashi feels relieved and asks her not to go on dates or to the party, ending with a sweet hug. Upon returning, he recalls the time when they were little and he confessed his feelings to her, but she didn't hear him. The next day, all the kids are in class, where Takushima continues to tease the protagonist about her second place, but they wonder what happened with Akira and Tadashi since they didn't show up. However, they are outside the classroom because she feels embarrassed to go in, although he doesn't mind and he takes her hand. But seeing that she isn't embarrassed, Akira hits him again. After a few days, Megumi visits Yahiro, which surprises him. In her notebook, she writes that she likes him and asks him out. During classes, Akira arrives worried because the protagonist is sick with a cold, but Takushima says she'll recover soon and suggests visiting her, which everyone agrees to except Megumi. When she asks Yahiro out, he accepted on the condition that she beats him in a game, which amuses him. She feels anxious about not telling her friends the reason but can't join them. Later, Megumi nervously waits in a cafe, and when Yahiro arrives, he acts completely cold towards her, which bothers her. She tries to suggest going somewhere fun, but he refuses everything, insisting on going to his place. As they walk, she attempts to sing a song to him, but it goes wrong, startling him. Yahiro tells Megumi to go home since it's boring, not realizing she isn't in love with him. She reluctantly agrees through her notebook. He starts teasing her about it, calling her strange for writing in it, leading her to throw her notebook in the trash. For the first time, she speaks up, explaining she does it to protect her voice and others. Tadashi confessed he's dating Akira, and Ryu is worried Yahiro might hurt them, so she wanted to help keep them together. She thought having Yahiro with a girlfriend would stop his interference, but he is upset and leaves, leaving Megumi angry after making an effort to speak. The rest of the SAA class visits Hikari and is surprised to learn she got sick from waiting for fruit-picking day, so her parents went alone and left her with the boys. Wrapped in sheets, she appears, but Takushima tells her to go back to bed since she won't recover, yet she insists he lift and carry her. During their date, Yahiro asks Megumi for lunch, which she can't believe he's doing. She pulls out the only food she has in her bag, which disappoints him, but he eats it anyway. When he sees her eating, he asks her to try harder, saying girls like to look nice for someone they like. Megumi returns with lipstick, astonishing him, but he keeps teasing her. At Hikari's house, Takishima prepares food and she starts petting him, making him nervous as she says she just wanted to. On their date, Megumi tires of Yahiro's reluctance to do anything and tries to get him to talk about his interests, angering him. He asks her to stop talking and briefly leaves, returning with a gift, a whiteboard for her to communicate because he values her voice. Confused, Megumi struggles to understand him. Later, at a restaurant, Megumi sees Ryu and Jun pass by, panics, and decides to flee, but her brother spots her. She tries to escape them in camouflage clothing, but is found, and Ryu, very upset, asks Yahiro what he did to his friend. Yahiro stands and falsely claims he forced her to go out because he thought he could use her, but Megumi realizes he's lying and pretends to be the villain to protect him. Despite everything, she decides to stay with him, confessing they are dating and asking their friends to leave them alone, leaving them speechless. Later, Yahiro asks Megumi not to pretend to be something she's not because he knows she only went out with him for Akira's sake, but he doesn't want to hurt her, so he asks her to go home. Megumi feels distressed as she only tried to look after her friend by acting bad, caring about her, but knowing no one will care for Yahiro. She climbs as high as she can and sings him a song to cheer him up. Then she asks him if he had fun, as the game seems to be still on. Meanwhile, Hikari recovers and finds all her classmates exhausted on the floor, but she doesn't remember losing control while wanting to be close to Takushima. Several days later, Hikari wins a pass for 7 people to go to athletic park, so she immediately plans to invite all her classmates. However, in class, everyone tells her they're busy and can't go. The protagonist decides to go alone, but Jun feels sorry for her and decides to accompany her. When Takushima hears about it, he also decides to go, setting aside his work. Upon arriving at an athletic park, Jun meets up first with Hikari, but they are surprised by Sakura, who followed Jun to confront him about always refusing her invitations to go out. It turns out he's on a date with Hikari. Takishima arrives at that moment and asserts it's just a friendly outing, since he's also there. While Kei and the protagonist argue about competitions, Jun decides to leave, but Sakura stops him. In front of everyone, she asks him to explain why he always avoids her, but he can't say anything and ends up fainting. Everyone rushes to help him, and Hikari remembers he fainted only during the barbecue, wondering if Jun's dark side might appear again, even though no one kissed him this time. Jun starts laughing as his flirtatious side emerges, but Sakura demands an explanation and insists they hold him tightly so he won't escape. To provoke Takishima into letting him go, Jun kisses him, surprising everyone, and Kei becomes so angry he now wants to catch him and get revenge. Later, the boys look for Jun and realize he's in one of the attractions. Takishima and Sakura immediately run towards him, but upon arrival, they don't find him, so they decide to search separately. On the way, Hikari wonders what caused Jun's dark side to emerge. She sees her rival getting ahead and finding him, asking strangers about Jun, and fortunately, they tell her where they saw him. The protagonist doesn't want to fall behind, so she tries to do the same but ends up scaring people away. Meanwhile, Sakura asks some girls about Jun, and they say they almost fell in love with him, which upsets her. When she clarifies they're not dating, the girls laugh at her, believing he's running away because she's too insistent and probably hates her. Those words sadden Sakura, realizing he told them that, but now she just wants him to say it to her face so she can forget her feelings. Then Takishima and Hikari find a place full of girls, assuming a friend is there. The girls inside get upset, but upon seeing Kei, they fall for him and let him through, frightening the protagonist, who says he looks like a mafia boss. Jun realizes they found him, but upon seeing Sakura, who appeared at that moment, he stares at her intensely and ends up fainting again. When he wakes up, he flees, leaving the girl alone once more, demanding an explanation. However, she overhears the others saying it's her fault for being too dominant and not leaving the guy alone. Before leaving, Jun stops and asks them to stop talking about her because it's really all his fault, but still runs away. Hikari encourages Sakura to go after him and sort things out. After Sakura followed Jun around the place, she ends up tripping and feeling exhausted, but he approaches to help her. However, he regrets it and asks her to keep running away, as he always does. He says he'll take back everything he said. Jun explains he does it because she's so strange, although he faints again. He confirms it used to happen because girls kissed him, but now just looking into her eyes changes his personality. He doesn't want to cause her trouble, and even though she's upset and hits him, Demanding to know if he really hates her or likes her, Jun admits he's liked her since she told him she likes both his personalities and fell in love with her from that moment. But because of this, he's worried about causing problems since he changes just by looking at her. And if they become a couple, he won't even be able to touch her, so they should stay apart. She tries to tell him if he doesn't try, he won't know what will happen, and he manages to touch her cheek, realizing she's very warm. Meanwhile, Takushima and Hikari were exhausted after finishing the day but hope their friends have resolved their problems. On a new day, the protagonist is ready to go to class but waits for the exact time to leave since she found a shortcut and plans to break her own record. When she leaves, her mother doesn't understand what kind of shortcut she's taking, walking along the edges of houses. However, the girl stumbles as she almost crashes into a boy who recognizes her as the intruder. As she tries to pull out her business card, Takishima's photos fall out, leading her to think he's a fan, but he actually belongs to the Takushima group, named Aoi Ogata. He's there on orders from the company president, who is Kei's grandfather. Despite this, he respects Kei as they belong to the same circle. Because of this, Hikari is excited because she likes Aoi and decides to help her watch over her friend, which he accepts. Later, Aoi gives the girl a stuffed animal with a camera, and she assures him she'll be the one to record Takushima so her grandfather can relax. Upon arriving at school, the agent sees how popular Kei is, surrounded by girls. While Hikari records him, her friend notices the strange stuffed animal in her uniform and she tries to deceive him. Later in class, Akira arrives with black tea and donuts to share, noticing her friend's strange doll. The other members appear and Jun and Tadashi warn them to prepare because Megumi will sing. Everyone gets scared, but the two boys prepare a device to neutralize her voice so everyone can hear her. However, it doesn't work, leaving everyone stunned, including Aoi, who was on the other side of the headphones. Nonetheless, Hikari manages to lift Megumi's spirits. Afterward, the class has a picnic and Akira prepares delicious sandwiches. Tadashi can't stop eating, leaving only one sandwich. Takishima and Hikari compete to grab it, challenging each other to assemble a puzzle with many pieces, a task they both excel at. Hikari is about to finish when she realizes her rival completed it long ago and is already eating the sandwich, all seen by Aoi. Later, when Hikari meets the agent, she asks if he could see everything in Kei's school life, thinking her grandfather will be at ease. However, Aoi says it's certain Takushima will study in London, leaving her confused and unwilling to accept it because they are rivals. Despite this, he decided and she agrees to accompany him. They are seen by Akira, who immediately calls Takushima, thinking he took her home because one of his employees was in a car with her. He wasn't aware and goes to look for her. Meanwhile, Aoi takes Hikari to all the Takushima companies where he is the boss because his father left him in charge, explaining she should focus on work. However, she admires him for being able to work and study at the same time. Takushima tries to join them but gets stuck in traffic when he realizes they are at his villa. Aoi shows her photos of Kei when he was younger and his global success in many competitions, making her realize she needs to work hard to surpass him. He asks her what Kei means to her and she says he's a great friend and a rival she wants to defeat. Meanwhile, Kei instructs the taxi to a location while he runs to the villa. At that moment, Aoi suggests Takushima change schools because the city and their current school are of low quality, which upsets Hikari. He challenges her to prove it, saying if she can hit him, she can consider herself a rival for Kei. She tries but fails and Aoi holds her arms, telling her to stay away from Takushima for her own good. Distressed, she calls her friend, who arrives and teaches the agent a lesson for trying to hurt her companion. Later, Takushima takes Hikari home, where she asks if he'll change schools. He plans to stay until graduation, which relieves her. She mentions feeling pain in her chest upon hearing he might leave, and he teasingly suggests it's because she's in love. Embarrassed, she quickly denies it and enters her house, uncertain of her true feelings. The next day, Hikari wakes up tired because she couldn't sleep all night thinking about Takushima's words, which make her blush again. When she arrives at class, everyone notices the protagonist acting strangely, so she tells them what happened and the words Kei said to her. However, as she finishes, she blushes and feels embarrassed, leaving everyone wondering why she did it. Megumi tries to find out if she hates or loves her partner, and Hikari confirms she loves him, like she loves everyone in the SA group equally. Megumi notices, however, that she always calls him by his last name and not his first name like she does with everyone else. Suddenly, she gets up quickly and accidentally spills tea on Takushima just as he arrives, causing him to burn his hand. She apologizes for what happened, though he tries to act like nothing happened, finding it difficult to use his left hand. Hikari volunteers to help him and tries to say his name, but she can't manage it and ends up acting weirdly, so he tells her to sleep a little, otherwise he'll carry her like a princess. When the protagonist is alone, she tries to understand why she can't call him by his name, remembering that since she was a child, she decided not to because he was a rival. Now wanting to do it, she questions if she's a bad person or if she hates Takushima in her conscience. That night, Aoi arrives with Kei, as he is there until he accompanies him to London, which the young man doesn't want. However, when the agent is alone, he makes a call confirming they must execute the plan. The next day, Hikari arrives at class and tries to say her partner's name at once, but notices he's not there. Later, she finds Takishima sleeping, so she takes the opportunity to say his name, finally managing it. However, he wakes up and she tries to play it off, but he suddenly starts asking her questions, all of which she answers with Kei. Eventually, she realizes and finally says it without feeling embarrassed. Kei tells her that it doesn't bother him if she calls him by his last name, but she feels she couldn't do it because she's in love with him. Hikari denies it, but the young man invites her on a date to find out more. The next day, the boys gather for the date, and she doesn't understand why he took her to an amusement park, but it's to confirm their feelings. When they go bowling, she thinks it's to compete, so she takes it seriously. However, she loses in the games, and in the end, Takishima gives her tickets to watch a fight. She blushes when she thanks him and touches his hand as she decides to go buy drinks. During the fight, Hikari continues thinking that she likes him, but not romantically, as she doesn't know what that means. At that moment, she sees a couple acting affectionate and imagines herself doing the same with Takishima, but it embarrasses her so much that she finds it difficult to think about it. Meanwhile, Aoi visits the school director, still insisting that Kei should leave the school. After the date ends, Hikari realizes she wasn't paying attention during the fight because she was lost in thought, but Takishima notices she's nervous, so he tries not to pressure her. He tells her he's not interested in romance, so she shouldn't worry. Nonetheless, she realizes her feelings for him, so she approaches and kisses him on the forehead, leaving him surprised. The protagonist tries to confess, but they're interrupted by a call from Kei. She immediately runs away to the bathroom, while he answers and gets upset to learn it's Tadashi, calling about something trivial. In the bathroom, she's determined to confess, but she sees some girls arrive, one of whom is crying over a guy who broke her heart. She overhears the phrase, "He who falls in love loses," so now Hikari thinks that if she confesses, she'll lose. When she returns to her date, she says she doesn't intend to lose at anything, so she flees from there, leaving the young man confused. The next day, the SA class meeting is closed by the director due to Aoi's threat. The following day, Hikari wakes up full of energy and notices something strange happening at school upon arrival, but her friend Akira distracts her when she arrives. However, Megumi and Jun take them to the SA room as something has happened, and upon entering, they notice their class has been closed down, though Takishima is the one visibly upset. Later, everyone gathers with the principal where she informs them that the class is dissolved because many parents complain about them drinking tea all the time, being late to class, not interacting with other students, bringing animals, among other things. They were given too much freedom, so she decided to dissolve the class. The protagonist won't let it end like this, so she decides to comply with the rules like the other students should, but Kei is not convinced by the principal's words. Later on, the SA class attends regular classes like the other students, which excites the protagonist, but the others are not used to it, trying to escape or even bringing things they shouldn't. In the principal's office, she makes Aoi understand that no matter what he tries, it won't separate them, but he still decides to proceed with his plan. During break, the kids go out to have some tea, but Akira is not happy with the situation and neither are many others. However, Hikari makes them understand that despite everything, they are still together. Ryu confirms this, saying the group is more than just elegance and the conservatory. Being with them feels like home. At that moment, the Yamamoto brothers receive a call from their parents, deciding to leave as they are worried, but the others must stay to try to reunite the class. When the bell rings, Hikari runs to class with Ryu and Takishima following, but Akira receives a call. Later, Kei stays outside the principal's office where he sees Aoi coming out and knows he was behind everything, but the agent says he won't stop until Takishima leaves with him. The next day, Hikari arrives at school and upon entering class, she notices Ryu is upset because he found out the Yamamoto brothers and Akira were expelled from school, but the teacher can't give much information. The protagonist asks me to look for the boys while she goes with her friend to find out what happened. When Takishima finds out, he confronts Aoi, who tells him to forget about his friends because they are pathetic, which angers him. When they arrive at Tutu's house, security doesn't let her in, but Tadashi arrives and tells her the boys were sent abroad. He asks her to accompany him and get on the motorcycle since he won't give up, and both decide to go with Ryu. Upon arrival, the brothers tell them their parents decided without their consent, but they cut the call upon seeing a security guard. Ryu explains they were enrolled because the SA didn't have many people, which was perfect for them, and without the class, they can't attend another. This reminds her that her friend must also be in the same situation but locked up, so she decides to return home and rescue her. However, Takishima arrives first and tells her to escape, but she tells him everything is because of the Takishima company, threatening her family and ruining their businesses if she doesn't leave the SA, so they had no choice. She's worried about her friend, so she asks the young man to take care of Hikari if he really likes her. At that moment, the maids arrive and ask the young man to leave the property to avoid trouble. He says he understands and decides to leave, but as he exits, he catches Hikari, who is about to fall while trying to climb over the wall of her friend's mansion, and decides to take her away from the place. During sunset, Kei continues to carry the protagonist, who asks him to put her down. When they're calmer, she says she can't believe what's happening because she didn't expect to be separated from her friends. Seeing her, Takishima gives her some flowers and asks her to take care of them. If she does, it will work like magic and everything will return to normal. That night, Hikari thinks about Kei as she looks at the flowers, but the young man is at the conservatory, remembering moments with his classmates, especially with Hikari, who appears at that moment to give him the flowers, saying she understood his feelings. However, all of this was a dream. The following day, Hikari returns to school wearing the uniform and carrying the flowers as her friend said, feeling nervous about it. But then she sees Akira, who has returned, and upon arriving at the conservatory, everyone is there, though sad, as Takishima's uniform is there, and they understand he sacrificed himself for the class by going to London. Because of this, Tadashi and Hikari rush to the airport, but after traveling and asking, they find out the young man has already taken the flight. So the protagonist runs after the plane to see Takishima and manages to do so, but he simply says goodbye as it's too late. After what happened, the SA kids know that Takishima decided to leave so that they could return, but they are worried about Hikari, who is alone in a corner, upset because she believes he intended to lose from the beginning, so he decided to go to London. Akira tries to stop her, saying he did it for her own good, but the protagonist says that's what bothers her the most and she'll search for him wherever she has to. When Hikari arrives home, she realizes London is very far away, making it complicated, but the house starts shaking at Sui in a helicopter asking her to go to London and talk to her brother. Aoi, with several agents, tries to stop her and threatens that if she travels, she won't be able to return to SA along with her friends. However, the other members are there and say they don't care, as they have decided to go even if the SA is dissolved, as everyone has submitted their resignation to the school. When they decide, everyone boards the helicopter and heads to London. Upon arrival, Akira is excited about all the attractions, thinking it's a rescue mission. They later go to the Takishima group headquarters, but are surprised to find it's bigger than their own house. Upon arrival, they are not allowed entry, so Akira knew this would happen as there is tight security. Additionally, they can't inform their friend that they are there, as his grandfather is eccentric and no one has seen him, which could be dangerous. She also demonstrates that there is too much security, but before starting the plan, she suggests they should go shopping. However, Kei knows his friends are there and ordered not to see them. That night, the kids manage to camouflage themselves and enter the first part of the headquarters. Akira claims they are celebrating a birthday and that the security might not be too tight, but they must be cautious. As they continue walking, the kids encounter a pack of dangerous dogs, so Ryu decides to stay behind to stop them while the others proceed. As they move away, they notice Ryu befriended the dog. They then arrive in a garden where there is a security laser tracking their movements, so Tadashi stays and stops them. Later, he realizes there are too many and is saved by Yahiro, who appears at that moment on a motorcycle. The others manage to enter the headquarters disguised as servants but are discovered, unsure of what to do. Fortunately, Sakura appears and helps Jun's alter ego distract the other maids. Upon reaching the roof, a security team is there, so Megumi decides to stay to allow her friends to continue. She realizes her voice doesn't come out when needed the most, but Yahiro appears and helps her get her voice back, defeating all the agents. While the girls run, Akira confesses feeling guilty about what Takishima did, but Hikari reassures her they are friends and she shouldn't worry. At that moment, Tadashi arrives on Yahiro's motorcycle, but everything goes wrong and Hikari wakes up in Kei's room. While there, the young man enters and notices her presence despite her rabbit disguise. Takishima admits that even though he didn't want to see her, she showed up. In reality, it's because seeing them all would hurt him and make things difficult. Upon hearing this, Hikari gives him her birthday present. He remembers she's been giving him presents since they were kids, always with a smile. Upon opening it, he finds plush toys of all of them. She challenges him to continue the competition, and he must take away her flowers. If she wins, he must return without objection. Takishima counters that if he wins, she'll be his partner forever. The kids start running while the school principal receives a call confirming the reinstatement of all SA members, making her happy. During the competition, the kids reach a great height of a building. Hikari confesses he's incredible, as she can never beat him, so she respects him. That makes him special, her eternal rival. However, her flowers fly away, so she jumps to catch them, but Kei catches her instead, and they share a warm kiss. The next day, everything returns to normal as the members return to school with their usual personalities.